There we go. Yeah. Should be good.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right, we'll call the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order on August 28th, 2020 at 3:00 p.m. Members present: John Sampin,
Here.
Will Raudebush,
Here.
Les Barber,
Here.
and John Wade.
Yes.
And
Here.
I'm Gail Nader, and I'm present. Did we review the minutes of last meeting?
Yes.
Is there any changes, corrections, additions?
No.
Okay. And I'll call for a motion to approve as submitted.
I'll second.
I'll make it.
Okay.
John Sampin and Will.
Right.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved. The certified local government draft ordinance. At our last meeting, we were in this position. We thought we were ready to send it on to City Council, and Les had reviewed it with a very critical eye and caught some things that were glaring omissions or corrections that needed to be made. So we made an executive decision to not forward it to City Council. Les did some intense work on it. You've all seen emails back and forth about it. And then at this point, I'm going to let Les describe how he took it from here. Is that all right, Les?
Okay. I think it basically, one of the precipitating factors is what we learned about the Perrysburg ordinance. That two things: Perrysburg uses as its standards, official regulations, etc., basically just the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. And the other thing is they don't have any guidelines, and this was the main problem with the document. They don't have any design guidelines of their own. They simply say, we will use the design guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior. And, you know, once I realized that, some things that had been nagging at me came into focus, and I realized that just getting rid of references to design guidelines in our document, other than saying we will use or we recommend, because they are just guidelines, recommendations, we recommend the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior. So the substantive amendments on the document that hopefully you all will be able to see or have, basically just get rid of references to design guidelines. And say at one point that we adopt the guidelines from the Secretary of Interior's standards or actually guidelines for the treatment of historic property. So, I mean, that's the heart of it. And then when I was going through it, I kept running on to small little things. So there are some proposed amendments that just clarify some things that I think we didn't address from the beginning. So does that make any sense? Does that make sense to everybody?
That's to me. Yes.
And so what is your pleasure to go forward? Do you want to review what Les has submitted further?
Well, I went through and read it, and I have some just like very minor editorial recommendations, I guess. But I can go over that. I have 7.
Okay. I had a few grammatical things because there was some was possessive and plurals and things like that that are really very minor but doesn't change the content.
And we may have caught the same things.
Okay. John?
I can go through.
I do not have any.
All right. And do you have anything?
I
All right.
tend to believe that the closer it is to what the federal guidelines are, is exactly
Yeah.
what we need to do with as little change as possible.
I suspect it'll be also an easier sell,
Absolutely,
because it's already been
Absolutely.
tried and true. We don't have to start over.
yeah.
And by sell, I mean making people aware of the fact that we have an ordinance that's going to help them, not hurt them. So Will, do you want to?
Yeah, I can go through mine.
Or-
I,
Can I interrupt just for a second, just
Just
to
1
ask
second,
a,
Will.
ask a
Wes?
question? John raised a sort of general issue about the speed with which we want to move. Since we have the mayor here, I wonder if we should address that before we get into this amendment. Just a question.
Are you going to be here for a while, Mayor? John, Will, yours are kind of quick, aren't they?
yes.
Your changes? So why don't we run
Yeah.
through that real quick, and then we'll take up less.
And I have it on my iPad, but I'm not going to try to switch to it because I think it could disconnect from Zoom.
Right,
So
well, if you just
I've
tell us
written-
what pages, we'll mark up a copy.
they're by the section. I've written them down. So 158.05J, 158.05J,
Okay,
and let me know what, and that's at the first line. And I think you need proposed versus proposed. Proposed versus proposed. It's on the first line.
Yeah. Good.
that's,
And let me know, I'll go-
absolutely, yep.
that's a spelling.
I'll go to the next one. 158.07. B is in boy, 1. 158.07 B1. It's on line 5.
Okay,
And I think again, I'm not pulling it, it just says the standards comma is a matter.
yep,
And line 8, same section, processes versus process.
okay.
Have you got it?
And
Gail?
then-
I'm
Yep,
not-
I'm
not
marking up a
keep- I'm
copy
not
right
keep-
now.
I'm not keeping up.
And Heather and I can make the changes between us.
Unless you can let me know when you want, I can move forward then. You know, let me know.
Yep, we're ready. Next one.
Okay, it's in 32.01, so it's towards the end. 30, and it's item P. So 32.01 P. And that, on there is just deleting a space to line up the P with the O up above it. It's just
Okay,
very
make
minor.
sure that lines.
Yeah.
Okay,
150.01, it's in the intent, so 150.01.
Mhm.
And it's highlighted in black and it uses the word protection. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be better to substitute the word preservation in there instead of the word protection.
What page is it, Gail, do you know?
It's in
16 at the top,
It-
4 lines
it's-
down.
150.01 section.
Protection and preservation. What's your pleasure, fellows?
Because I thought, like, I'm not sure about protecting. That's sort of like, painting things or protecting it or something. But I thought, this whole commission's the preservation commission. I thought, maybe that would be a better word.
I'm fine with preservation.
Okay. John, good? Okay, we'll make that change.
And on 150.10 B2, 150.10 B2, there's some words that aren't capitalized that I think they're capitalized in previous sections, and it's the word property and district. That's because I think I was reading there's something there about they were capitalized before, and I think that they may need to be capitalized.
Second line of number 2,
On page 19?
page 19, yeah.
19.
So, it'd be like the fifth line from the top.
Okay. So those need to be capitalized.
And then,
The property and district or not.
Okay.
next to last one's 150.103.
Mhm.
150.103, line 2.
Okay.
And at the end, I think it'd probably be good to add the word code after preservation, because that's the title of this document. So it's got like architectural preservation. And I think to add the word code, and it matches what we've been titling the.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure on this one, it's 150.13, but Les being the English scholar would know better, but it's line 1. So 150.132, line 1. And as the word between party and interest, whether that should be party of interest, because I think it's written party in interest.
That's exactly how the zoning code reads now, so.
Yes, the end, okay, then I'll just leave it then.
We better not fool with it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, then leave it if it already exists. Precedent's set, yeah. That's it, that's all I had.
Okay.
Good job.
All right. And with those changes made, what would you like to do next?
Oh,
Submit? Time to send on to city council?
Yeah, I don't know whether they would need to see like a brief, the questions and answers, or whether sending it separate's fine.
Well, the Q&A was the FAQ kind of thing was more for us as a board than the city council, wasn't it?
Okay,
But I mean, it will be essential for them to have the same information.
yeah, I think eventually be on the website.
But doesn't the process, once we do send it on to city council, you have to notify them, you have to put it on the agenda, there's a whole process that goes next.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that, honestly, that's my biggest concern, that you're really handing a very hefty document to them with, I don't want to use the word very little information, but I mean, it can be
Okay.
translated several different ways without having an addendum or explanation of some sort. So that is my biggest
Okay.
concern. I just wanted you all to be
Okay.
prepared, because you're going to be their sounding board.
Right.
You wrote this.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just, next phase is very public and you have to be very prepared. So, and we know what's happened before. So that's my caution that I'm putting out to everyone, that to be prepared.
So having some sort of an associated document with the questions that might come up that we're thinking that might come up, and some other explanation.
Which I think let's start with the transmittal letter.
Right.
Yeah,
We
we
It's
have
helpful,
that.
but
Like that, and we have a sort of, we're working on a draft, Don, and
Mhm.
Will and I, of questions, and I think a couple of you have seen it. The others
Right.
have seen it.
Okay,
But it's not ready for I think, I'm stumbling here, I think that the commission as a group needs to look at them and decide, yeah, these are the answers we like. I don't think the three of us should make those decisions.
So at this point, if we accept this document as a final working draft, and then our next step would be to compile a package, and we'll review that at our next meeting. Would that work?
Compile that. What do you mean by that, Gail?
Compile a package of information, the explanation to the council, places they can go for more information if they need it. People, contact list, Nathan Bevel's information, because somebody may want to call Nathan Bevel outside of our group. And so we'll compile make our presentation ready at between now and our next meeting. Does that work?
Is this the time? And
Well,
if
that's
it's not,
next.
then tell me, okay?
Well, but
because
to compile a package is separate from when we're gonna approach that. But we need to know what happens. Got this document, what's next? So that would be to help them understand the document. And then at the next meeting, we can say, we're ready to go. We're ready to give it to them. Would that be all right?
or not.
Or not.
Depending on the
I-
discussion we have of this broader
Right.
issue that John raised.
Okay,
This-
so,
this-
well, I'm working
Yeah.
on, I'm working on my old knowledge of procedures. So we've made changes. We need to accept this new document and
Well,
approve this new
we'll have to
document.
talk about the amendments proposed.
Other amendments?
Well,
to
these
this?
were just wills.
Okay,
that
so
we
you
just-
have other amendments too?
No, just the ones that Heather typed in.
Right, so this document that we just went through, is that all the changes that you intend to propose?
I want to ask about a more general one,
Okay.
a big one.
All right,
but
Okay.
I have no more specific ones.
so,
And I just took your edits and put them in there. I didn't
Right.
do anything with it, just so we're
Right.
clear.
Right. They're all,
but
they're
from
all
a
there. That's-
procedure standpoint, we made changes, or we're gonna make more changes? Maybe?
Should I describe that issue now?
Okay, well, we
Or
need
should we
him to
take- or
talk,
should we take care of
we
the-
need him to talk while Mayor's still here, so why don't we discuss, we'll hold on this for a minute, and we'll
Okay.
discuss the, your concern about,
My
Timing.
concern is that, with all that's going on in the world right now, if this is the right time to be doing this, I don't know, from the downtown businesses, and I certainly don't speak for all the downtown businesses, but I know that there's a lot of places that are struggling. And I'm just not comfortable that now is the time to be going and asking for something else at this point and asking them to buy into something else. I think we've got places that are probably struggling to make ends meet. And then to go and to bring the suggestion that, well, wait a minute, we want you to look at some things. And I think this is wonderful. Believe me, I'm not against this by any means.
quite frankly, I share your concern, not just for the public, or not for the commercial people, but everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Mayor, can you join our conversation, please? Is that all right?
I would say that I think John raises a very valid point. And that I don't want that comment to be misconstrued as me backing away or not expressing support for the Historic Preservation Commission and the work that you're doing, and the fact that this is something that we want to implement in Bowling Green. I remain committed to it. Timing is very important. I think that the conversation should revolve around the idea that we want to time the introduction and the implementation, or introduction of this to City Council and the implementation of it into our community at a time where it's going to give us its best chance for success. And if that means that we reconsider doing that during the course of 2020, or we delay that until the world looks a little bit different, then I would support that delay if it was thought that that was appropriate. To me, it's just always more important to get it right than to get it quick. I really don't feel like there is any deadline, associated with this. I don't want you to perceive that there is an artificial or a real deadline of any sort. Again, from my perspective, it's just more important to get it right than it is to get it quick. So I'll support whatever notion or whatever process you guys decide upon. But again, from my perspective, the point raised about pressure and stress on businesses and everybody in general, I think is a very valid one. And I think it's worth discussing whether or not there may be a better time to consider, first of all, introducing this to City Council, asking them to process it, which would include public hearings, very vital component of this. And we're a little bit challenged right now with our ability to really facilitate public input in a way that we would have perhaps liked to in the past. So because of that, City Council is kind of slowing down some of the things that have been on their agenda. So I think you're really on to something, John. I really do. But I again, I don't want to drive what your decision is. I just would hope to offer my perspective on what I'm hearing.
Well, we appreciate your input. I was having a very similar feeling, and we were having a chat before we started the meeting about the stresses on families and working parents and children at home being schooled. And I think going slowly and methodically will be a good plan forward.
Yeah,
Mike, I have a question. Do you think it would be a good thing if we delayed any formal procedures for an indeterminate time at this point until we feel that it's comfortable, maybe in consultation with you? But could we start sort of informal attempts to talk to groups of people, kind of, that'll be hard too, because they're probably not meeting, civic groups, but maybe they're meeting virtually, and perhaps we could start talking about the issues that we're working on, but not phrase them, not code them as if it's a done deal.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm-
That makes sense
I'm
to me.
being awkward in the way
That
I'm
you
saying
would, I mean, it appears as though you're getting really close to formulating your final document. I really like the idea of putting together an accompanying document that's going to provide a little bit of context for city council, because as was mentioned, this is a pretty big, complex program, and we need to help them. I mean, to help them sort through that. It's going to be difficult for them to do that really in the process of 3 council meetings, and then express that to the public and help them understand it. So yeah, I think the notion of maybe engaging with some of the service groups. Kiwanis, I know, is conducting Zoom meetings, so I could connect you with some of the people that are programming for Kiwanis. Maybe that's a way to do it. Other small group opportunities. I think that's a really good idea. And along the way, you're building understanding and perhaps building buy-in and consensus on the concepts.
What about the possibility even of informal information sessions with council and
Yeah.
the planning commission?
Yeah, I think very
Just
soon.
information.
I think very soon we need to bring President Hollenbaugh into the conversation. We need to remember that President Hollenbaugh will set the agenda for City Council, so his input on the timing of the introduction onto their agenda is going to be a very critical component as well.
I might add, when I was on the planning commission, we did the sign ordinance. I know it had tried it a couple times before, but it had failed. And I think even to maybe get off of the planning commission. But what we did that seemed to be successful was when we had a hearing or just an open session at the library for individuals to come and just voice their opinions and talk about what we were proposing on that ordinance. And what we did was we actually approached some of the people that came up in front and talked, like Al Green and others, and had them actually be on the sign committee. So even at some point, maybe having because it was before it even left the planning commission, it hadn't even gone to council. We did it just to get input from the public, and so there was some that got up that were real negative against it. We invited them to be on the committee, and I think it benefited, and it went through. It was successful.
All right, well, the general consensus seems to be to time it right.
So the general idea
Whatever
would
that
be to
means.
wait until we're fairly confident that the issues of COVID wouldn't be
Yeah, that's
why people would respond negatively to our document. Is that the idea, John, that we shouldn't put ourselves in a more difficult position than we need to?
I would think so. I think,
Okay.
like I say, I think everybody's got enough anxiety and worries about things that I think if we can get them at a better time, when things are trending up, would be a better chance of this passing and people getting behind it.
Okay, thank you.
That's a bad idea, really, to give ourselves the chance to do informal
Well, we can
public
work,
engagement work.
we can work on public engagement, we can work on a lot of we can work on our building inventory, a lot of the stuff that needs to go along with this process, and we can work on it, we just don't have to hurry.
Les, I really like your idea of small group engagements, small group discussions, perhaps a little less formal. I think that, as I mentioned before, I think that really gives you an opportunity to help people understand it, maybe a little bit better than when it was proposed the last time. And also it's going to help facilitate buy-in and acceptance and, embracement on behalf of, the community. I like that idea very, very much.
Okay,
Well, and someone can always ask a question we never even thought of. There's always a possibility there, and we look back
Yep.
at the ordinance, go, oh, that's one thing we didn't think about, and we need to add it. You just never know.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question as well?
absolutely.
When sooner or later, an area is going to be set up, hopefully, this is gonna pass, and there's
Uh-huh.
gonna be a boundary set up. And it seems to me that one of the things that's important to know about who we're dealing with is in that boundary, how many people are the downtown businesses and how many people are the residential? Because sooner or later, there's gonna come to a vote, is my understanding from looking at this. Sooner or later, it has to come up to a vote as to whether this is gonna be accepted. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Les is saying no, but in there, we talked about a majority.
This document
Not-
doesn't.
not
No,
this,
no,
no,
the
no,
historic
but-
district.
Yeah, but the district sooner or later has to come to a vote.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
second step, yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, I would think that it would be beneficial to know a rough idea of the boundaries that we're talking about. I mean, does the downtown represent 5% of the potential voters, or does it represent 65% of the
It's
potential
voted
voters?
on, now this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, it's voted on by the residents in the proposed boundary.
Okay,
So if you draw a map around downtown, those are the people that vote on yes or no, they want to form a historic district.
and the
That-
downtown business people vote as well?
Well,
the
one
owners?
property
That would be
owner,
the owners.
Property owners?
the property owners are the voters. The tenants would not be a voter,
So the property
it would be
owners?
the property owner. Is that, am I?
Yes.
Okay.
And I hate to call it a vote. I mean, it's really, there's
A,
several ways you can do it. But yeah, I mean, essentially you could go door to door and have them sign a petition that
but
they're in
they
favor of
have
this
to,
and
they have to agree or not agree.
a
They have
majority.
to give a yes or a no, but it's the property owner in the boundary of the map you drew. So-
Okay.
But I did talk to Mike Marsh for clarity, and he felt how the ordinance was written, and the fairest way is to have property owners get one vote.
Yes,
So
One vote per property.
no, property owners. So let's say someone owned a house over here and one over here in this area of the overlay or potential overlay, they get one vote.
ooh, really?
That's
That-
great.
Mike said that?
Excellent.
Wow,
We can get that in writing, but yes, he did call me
Don't
and he
act
did
so
say that.
surprised.
that's,
See, but.
I mean, that helps us a
But
lot.
that's why I suspect that we might want to look at who those owners are, how many of them are downtown businesses, how many are residential, how many are rentals.
Okay, now to follow up on that discussion, that information needs to be documented somewhere in this document, I guess. How do you form a district? How do we form a historic district? A, B, C, we identify, we draw a map, we take a vote. But that absolutely has to be established going in.
A basic marketing program is to know who you're going after. And those percentages, it would seem to me, would be radically different between residential owners versus downtown business owners. And how you might approach them would be probably a bit different as well.
I think they'll be pretty much separate issues, John,
Okay,
because the existing Main Street is what it's called, the Main Street District is a district of downtown property owners only, right? And
Well-
Boomtown is basically
Yeah.
residential owners. Those are
I
the
mean,
three.
I don't recall his downtown, the map itself, there's no residential properties included in it, I don't think. But now that we have different kinds of land use, if you're going down Grove Street, there's now, some businesses there on Grove Street. So again, how do you?
then I'm confused, which is not surprising.
No,
I'm
if you're
sure.
going, if you don't grow, there's a brewery and,
Right, but the overall, if this all is enacted and the guidelines come into effect, wouldn't they would affect everyone within the district? Everyone within the boundaries? including downtown?
Well, it would be each district is separate. They're not contiguous.
Okay.
Is that right?
Potentially, yes, depending on how it's drawn and who, who the boundaries you're looking at, and then if you get that majority to agree.
Well, and
Okay.
the general
Right.
idea was to follow the established historic district, like
Yeah.
the downtown map, the one that's, it's on the historic register. Boomtown, so on Boomtown, that's a good one, that's because that's my house, goes down Worcester Street, well, you got the funeral home, that's a business. So, but they would have to abide by, they're in the district, so it doesn't matter whether they're a residence or a commercial. That, right, good?
And they would
See,
get
could you,
the
Right,
could
established.
it,
yes, Will?
could it be done with the overlays? In other words, you have a residential overlay and a business overlay. So this is the business overlay could say covers some of the downtown business, but it also would go out there and get that funeral home sort of like an island that it's still maybe in that overlay.
That's out of my realm of knowledge.
That's
Heather?
how the document's written.
Yeah,
The only way we can do it is the overlay zoning.
It's a overlay zoning.
Yeah, that's the second process. So first you get the ordinance, and you can't really do anything with the ordinance until you get the actual historic overlay zoning. So yeah, it's got a long haul.
Okay, can you remind me, I know we've talked about this, but we have the Boomtown, we have the downtown districts. When we either poll our residents and our owners, or whether we have vote, or we do it, will we do it in two different sections, or do we have to have everyone together voting to decide if we have have this ordinance or not? Do we do it in two segments or all together? Does that make sense? Not really. I'm just curious if we just have the owners of the properties on Worcester Street voting separately from those downtown businesses.
On what, John?
Yes, they would vote to be, the Boomtown group, or the Boomtown map, the owners within the Boomtown map, wherever you draw the line around the property, they would vote on their own
Right.
Boomtown, City of Bowling Green historic district.
So we could potentially have Boomtown accept it and the downtown not accept it, and we
Yes.
still have a CLG, right?
I am not going to have a vote on whether or not the downtown. I am going to have a vote on Boomtown because that's where my property is.
Right.
You're going to have a vote on the downtown section because that's where your property is.
The CLG, John, is entirely separate from this question about establishing districts. That's a
Okay.
separate step.
Right. But could we have a CLG based on just the residential Boomtown area?
No, we have a
No,
CLG for the
you're-
city of Bowling Green.
I think you're oranges and apples. The CLG is legislation that sets us up to do our work.
Right. The CLG allows you as a local jurisdiction to have authority over your historic properties. Like right now, we have no say in preservation, or let's say I have a historic home, I want to get it in the National Register. I just go to the state government basically, and they go to the federal and get it approved. But if we were a CLG, I'd have to go in front of the HPC and ask for their permission as the local jurisdiction, and then it would still go through the state and federal government, but that gives the local authority to Bowling Green. Right now, we truly have no say in any type of historic preservation because we are not a certified local government. So it's sort of two separate things. You
Right.
can't even have your own historic districts yourself as City of Bowling Green without being a CLG. I don't know if I said that right, but we don't have any power right now.
Right, this document, once city council adopts it, gives us the, power's not the right word, but the authority to then develop individual districts, and they may or may not be Boomtown and Downtown and Needle Hall. It's gonna be whatever we identify as, if we want a map that's, we want 5, if we wanna make smaller districts, it might be easier to get approval. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say that too. I mean, if you do have kind of more of a simplified document to hand somebody, maybe I live on Court Street and I'm feeling really empowered as a new homeowner to make Court Street a historic district. So I now have the tools as a property owner that I may want to go door to door and make my own Court Street Historic District and approach HPC with written language that says, hey, I got 70% of my property owners in this district to sign. And then they would bring it to you all, and then you would say, great, awesome, we're ready to move this forward. We believe in it, and we're going to recommend it to council. Does that make sense? I think it doesn't
Yeah.
just have to be the HPC doing all the work. It
And
can
then-
empower local.
And in fact, our
Owners.
document is written so that individuals can propose their own, just an individual property as a historic property. That's also possible,
Right.
given the way we've written.
Do we want to do it that way, though? I mean, do you want to have separate districts? Because isn't that somewhat taking a chance in that you could have where you live be protected and yet go a block over and find that there's nothing there?
I don't think we're gonna be able to avoid that. I think we're gonna, I mean, zoning is, an imperfect science, isn't it, Heather?
That's one way to put it.
I think
Because they're
one,
gonna, I mean, you're gonna have islands of, you know, where he lives, he's gonna have all the people in his immediate neighborhood, but a block off, they're all college rentals, so they're gonna say, no, no, no.
But
So
the
it's
goal,
gonna be,
but the goal would be to
right,
draw the line as far as you can get it, because you want your neighbors under the same
right.
standards as you are as a homeowner, because why would I put a $20,000 roof on that's, or
But are
preserve
we-
it when the neighbor can just let their
Are
roof.
we being given the opportunity to do it as one big group, though, with what Mike Marsh is saying? And saying
No.
that, wait a minute, one owner, doesn't matter how many properties you have, one owner, one vote.
But that's within your map, within your, you draw
Okay,
your
But
square.
but if you make the map be the bigger area downtown and bring the downtown businesses in, aren't we protecting all of Bowling Green more? And
Yes,
possibly.
one of the issues is what is historic and what isn't, what we would see as worthy of protection.
Right,
So if we had, for example, your situation, let's say we're talking about Prospect Street, and we propose a district, and there's one house on Summit that doesn't really fit the district, we can't figure out any way of including it in the district. Well, let's say it's on Enterprise, so it's farther away, so, we could do a little gerrymandering, given the way we've written the document, but we couldn't go too far. Let's say there's one property over there, and that person wants to be protected too. So what we say to that person is, okay, just request individual listed property status. And you're protected in exactly the same way as we are in the Prospect Street district. That's speaking to the,
I
concern
guess
you're raising?
I've got a misunderstanding here, because I guess I was looking at this from a perspective that the more we protect downtown and make sure that the downtown area stays in its best possible light, that then it works outwards from there and helps protect all the other areas as well. And that if you do, I was working from that perspective, okay? And that, we're gonna stop somebody or at least make somebody think twice before they're gonna come in and do something crazy downtown. And change, like the old hotel downtown is gorgeous, okay? That if we work out, that we actually add protection everywhere.
and I think at that point, you have to, there's gonna be a judgment between, when you get farther away, they're less historic or less, and not worthy of protection is not the right.
Well,
term,
there's
but
contributing versus not
Right.
contributing.
But it's, but the bigger you make it, the more you have pieces of property that don't conform or aren't contributing,
Sure.
and so that's an issue.
But I think you're right. The
You're
biggest
onto
goal is
something.
to have
Yeah, the bigger pole.
the entire downtown, because it's downtown that's our crown jewel in the city, and that would be the ultimate goal. Have it be the entire downtown, because I picture if you had unfortunately a block burned down or something, it's gone. There's no preservation regulations in place to bring up the building to match really kind of the surrounding area it was originally built. So it's definitely a concern that we'd have no type of ordinance to protect that.
Well, and that's why I wonder with the numbers, if you look at who you're trying to approach with this, if it's worth looking at the numbers to say, wait a minute, when you've got one property owner, you've got one owner, not necessarily a property owner, but one vote for that person, which when you look at the overall numbers, is now if the time is to look at it and try to do the whole thing.
Those maps that you brought one time, they're huge, but can we have a print out that we could sort of have a committee meeting or something and pencil in, here's what we think a good district might be?
Oh, absolutely.
And you could take the downtown and a couple of us you could take your part and, you know, we could all have like our neighborhood and pencil in use a pencil and go, yeah, we think this would be a good district and start, and that could be something we do while we're kind of waiting for the virus to go away.
Well, and it might be something that when you figure out the overall numbers, that maybe downtown, there's only gonna be 30% of the people that will say yes. But maybe in your neighborhood, there's gonna be 60 or 70%, and when you add the two together, it gets this whole.
But it doesn't matter what happens in my neighborhood is not gonna affect what happens downtown.
No matter how we do it,
It
there
goes,
won't be.
well, unless you did one all the way around Boomtown, I mean, you
Okay,
could go.
maybe
that-
I'm understanding now. Okay, you're thinking about how to get
He wants
positive
to make
vote.
one big district.
Yeah.
So if you,
And again, if I'm wasting time, I apologize, but
Well, it's a good question. We had never discussed it, so
It's,
it's,
it's for a later stage of this process, but,
Okay.
you know, we need to understand all of this stuff from the
Heather,
beginning,
do you-
because if we don't understand it, then we're
Right.
in
Yeah.
trouble when we get to the
do you have a
public.
sense on what the individual districts, what works or what doesn't? Or might we call Nathan for that? He's really good to talk to. I could call him.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure. Like Les said, that's really getting far down the weeds, I think.
Kind of, yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
granular.
I mean, I think you'll have more a feel when you're doing those informal discussions, kind of where people are at, and
But I think if we get those maps and start actually looking at who's in your neighborhood, and are they a historic supporter or do they hate anything that's,
right.
you know.
Well, and that's what Nathan said. He was always surprised that the Bowling Green, Main Street, area is very small compared to what it is on the ground. Really, what's designated on the register is very small. So
Yeah, it's only 2 blocks either
Very
direction of
small.
Main Street.
Mhm.
All right, so
Okay, thank you.
are we
Mhm.
good with that?
Yes.
You had
Question.
yeah.
Are you sure that Mike was addressing the issue? Because didn't he already tell us that it was gonna have to be one property, one vote per property? The question that Gail raised was, what about a property that has 2 parcels? Was he addressing the
Right.
parcel issue or?
no owners.
He was
He
talking
said
about
how
the
he wrote
property.
it,
Oh,
it
wow.
goes to owners.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to get that in writing. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's for
Well,
sure.
and maybe if we did a map and sat down with him and said, here, Mike, this is the map we're thinking about. This is the district we'd like to consider. Who gets to vote? Who votes? How do we make sure we're fair? We want to be absolutely, because defending that will be costly if we're wrong, and we don't want to be wrong. And so show him what we have in mind on black and white. Maybe that'll be a good way to help him understand what
Yeah.
we have in mind.
Yeah, no, I think just what you said, getting it in writing from him, but he plain as day said property owner. He thought that was the fairest way, and that's how this is written. So
Well, makes it a whole lot more
Yeah.
probable that we can get
Yeah. Well,
something done
that's
eventually.
down the road, a ways. And you had another set of
So do
questions?
you want to, well, okay.
Well,
so-
let's. I mean, we're on the CLG. Does it have to do with CLG?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with your next discussion issue item.
Okay, so in addition to the amendments that I proposed and that you have in the document that Heather typed up,
Mhm.
we're very happy for that. It's a question really. I'm not sure that I'm devoted to it. Items, here it is, in 15807, the section on standards and guidelines. Items 1 and 2
Under A?
under A, yeah.
Okay.
Items 1 and 2. And I got it. Well, anyway, there are 13 of them altogether. 10 of them are basically just rewritten versions of the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. And they were rewritten partly because I was using what George Winter did back in 14, 15, and he did that. And I did it partly because I wanted to sort of soften some of the language so that it didn't appear to our people that it was quite as demanding as it might otherwise appear. But in the end, we also say we will follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. So I started to wonder, maybe we're making a mistake in having a set of rewritten ones in our document and also say that we're using the Secretary of the Interior standards. That maybe we should just say, we're using the Secretary of the Interior
I like
standards.
that. Cut to the chase.
That's it.
Me too.
The
Yeah.
downside, as I see it, the downside is then there would only be, I think, 4 or 5 items in that whole section on standards and guidelines.
But we've referred to a document that's widely available and can be.
Yeah, but here's the thing that I'm worried about. That will make it more obvious that we have talked about landscaping, for example. And landscaping is now sort of hidden inside of all of that other stuff. And I know this is cynical, but so I'm uncertain about what the right thing is to do here, but it would simplify things if we just said we're using the Secretary's standards and then just drop items.
But I can tell you from my office, from an enforcement standpoint, the more clearer things are, the easier it is.
Yep.
Because, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, go look in this 258-page rehab document and good luck. You know what I mean? Like it's very hard from an enforcement standpoint, the less information you have to hand people. So that,
So
just
in a
giving
way,
you
it's
my
good to have
office's
them here.
devil's advocate.
In a way, it's good to have them here.
In a way, yes, but
But
this,
we could
but
just-
I haven't read
Okay.
every single one since
Okay.
we've
But
been
we
sitting
could
here.
just we could just reprint the
Yeah.
Secretary's language, not
I
use our
would,
own language.
I would say what we need to do is make sure that anything that we put in is aligned with the Secretary's standards or, explained appropriately.
See, what I like about what we have there, Les, and that you wrote, or you and George wrote, I'm not sure, is that it really is very gentle. You say I'm just looking for an example. It's not dictatorial. We're being very careful in saying, well, we would prefer, rather than we will force an issue. And I think that could be on our side for people that are nervous about this. I mean, it's not that we want to prevent them from going to look at the guidelines of the state, but this might just soften it for those people that are concerned. I kind of like having what you have in there if it follows along the state guidelines.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want something that we said that we're gonna accept the state guidelines, we have this local guideline and they conflict, and that makes Heather's job harder.
Right.
So if we can make sure that they align and they don't conflict, then I like leaving it in, but.
I don't think they conflict. I mean, that was the whole point.
Well, I don't
when
think
was
either,
about-
but, yeah.
But the language is different, and so
Mhm.
we're kind of being a little bit ambiguous in saying, here are the standards, and over here are also the Secretary's standards.
Well, let's, between now and the next time we meet, all of us take a hard look at 15807 and see what we, if you think, Les sent an email that had the thing, really take a good hard look and see if you think it is appropriate and needs edited, aligns with the Secretary of State. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so just,
Will, do you have any input?
That sounds good. No, that sounds good.
I heard your voice, and when you're not in the room, I heard your voice, like, don't wanna miss you. All right, so I guess now at this point, we'll take some time, study this document, see if there's any more changes need to be made or updates, and we'll revisit it at our next meeting. Is there anything else on that? Heather, do you have anything else for
well,
the,
do you want to deal with the amendments that I proposed to get rid of the design guideline issue? And
didn't we already do that?
no, all we did were wills.
Okay,
No, I appreciate what you did, Les,
okay.
and Heather marking that up and bolding what got changed and all. And you did a lot of work. That's very appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go with your proposed change.
Okay, so, well, you decide how you want to handle it. Do you want to take them one by one or do the whole package if nobody has any issues with them?
How many are there? Is it a lot?
There are
or-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I have no problem.
7, 8. There are 8 that have to do with the design guidelines issue, and then there are another 4 or 5 that are just clarifying issues.
Wait, but that's not,
They're in here, yeah.
they're already in this document.
Yeah, because Heather typed
They're
them.
bold, in bold. They're bolded.
Yep, yep.
No.
Good. I thought we were putting more into they're already there. So yes, let's look at
They're
the,
there. Yep.
let's just go one at a time, and if we have changes or questions.
Okay.
15803,
15803A.
painting and choice of colors.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with design guidelines. That's just trying to clarify for the skeptical owner that,
Right, we're not making them paint their door
Right.
knocker purple.
right.
That's all right with me. Any comments, questions on that?
No, fine.
All right, then we go to page 4. Down on W.
Mhm.
W. I have to take this mask off. I'm sorry. I'll stay over here.
We'll lean
I'll
away from
move.
each other.
I'll move farther away.
What's that noise?
No idea.
It sounds like you're in ICU on a breathing machine. It's making me a little nervous.
Yeah, so in this, okay, this W on page 4,
Right?
that also doesn't have anything to do with the design guidelines issue. It's just that when I was reading rereading this, I thought it doesn't refer to non-contributing properties that they're not non-contributing because they didn't have the qualities from the beginning, even if they were built in the same period.
Sure.
So that's
That's
all.
okay with me.
Just-
And then property is just corrected to the word district.
And you need, just one more thing, Heather, on W,
Hmm.
you need to put after the word period of significance, comma, or. Because it's one of a series. Because it was not present during the period of significance, comma, or because it did not have those qualities, even if built in the same period, like that.
Okay,
Okay?
got it?
And where's the next one?
Page 7.
7, B.
Yeah, okay, so this one is dealing with the design guidelines issue. The way we had it before, the commission shall establish and use written guidelines. And we now realize that
Yep.
we don't need to do that.
Right. It works for me.
Yep, I'm fine.
And J, we're deleting,
So the old J is,
okay,
Out.
so the new J is on the top of page 8.
okay.
Mhm.
And this is basically just to give us the authority, if we ever need to propose additional standards or requirements if
Right.
some particular district were to want it. And so it's kind of just a,
Got it. Yeah, it works for
Yeah.
me.
If that wasn't in there, is there another way to do it? All I'm saying is that, to me, that makes it sound like, wait a minute, we're gonna, being a little cynical here, we're gonna keep the ability to change this on you. Okay, and if I was looking at it, I think, oh, well, wait a minute, they're still keeping something back that they can change this on. That's my interpretation. Now, that may be wrong.
well, only through the same process of going to council and,
Okay,
going through the whole rigmarole of public hearings and the whole thing.
okay, all right.
Not on our own authority. We would only have the authority to propose additional
All
or
right.
different standards
I
or
understand.
requirements if we felt it was necessary for any reason.
And as long as it's got to go to the city council.
Yeah, that's there, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on J?
Nope.
Nope, I'm okay.
Then
Okay.
page 9, at least a simple majority changed from 51%, which is the same thing, isn't it?
It was John Wade's idea,
that's-
and
that's-
in his mind, it
it's-
sounds better.
Yep, that's good. Then page 10, F,
Okay, this is another one of clarification. If the owners of an individual property refuses or declines to give written consent to a proposed listing, and the commission feels it of considerable importance to the community, in the context, it appeared that it was dealing only with historic districts, and I wanted to make sure it's clear that whether it's in a historic district or an individual listed property, that the commission would have the right to propose it. I mean, for
we
example.
have no historic districts, and you may look at some structure that's, in the middle, an island in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, the windmill occurred to me, the windmill structure. I mean, what if we got wind that there was gonna be a new owner and it might want to tear that thing down? And the present owner was not interested in protecting it. Maybe we should have the ability to propose to city council that it become a listed property. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but council would decide. The idea is to give us the opportunity to propose in a situation like that, that's all.
Comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay, we're all right with that one?
Yeah.
The next one just looks to be semantics, general guidelines change to standards,
Yeah, to get rid of the
right?
word guidelines as much as
Standard.
possible.
Okay,
Okay.
A4 at the bottom.
This just refers to the possibility that we would not be able to be flexible in some matters if a particular district asks for some more strict regulations and city council approved them. know if it's needed or not, but
It actually is more explanative than what we had before.
Mhm.
Any comments on that one?
Yep, fine.
We're good? Okay. Next page. 13, this is also expected of individual listed properties.
yeah, that seemed to me
Fine.
to a big lapse on our part to have let that go.
One would hope it was to every property everywhere, but there's
But
that.
it says in historic districts, so.
And then the next section, B1, you added, and it just defines the use of the standard. Right?
Yeah. And the idea was to try to clarify for the general reader here that preservation in the preservation section of the secretary standards are not something, action in that category would not require COAs. If you're just preserving what's there,
Sure.
you're not changing anything, you're preserving, you don't need to come to us. And reconstruction is almost never going to happen. Reconstruction is starting from scratch and somebody saying, hey, I want to build an 1860s building. I want to reconstruct
Well,
one.
but that would be Heather's comment about downtown. If you lost if there was some terrible situation and you lost
Maybe,
a block.
yeah.
And
And,
you
yeah,
know,
it could
somebody's
happen.
gonna build, come
But-
in and build it up differently and without some guidelines to
Yeah.
make it jive with the rest of downtown, or in my neighborhood, somebody decides to put up some weird thing and it doesn't go with all the Victorian homes.
But it's going to be rare.
But it could happen.
Restoration is a little less rare. I mean, in our own house, we restored a porch that had been lost.
Uh-huh.
We didn't know about any of this. I think we did a fairly good job, but we probably could have done it a little better if we had known about all these guidelines
Right.
at the time.
In
But the big
addition-
thing is rehabilitation. I mean, probably 95% or more of all COAs are going to have to do with rehabilitation. This is just an attempt to clarify that to the general reader. Oh, and the first line will have to be changed if we decide to drop.
On this
the
one,
next
I
meeting.
would take out must be and change it to are.
Where is that? What
Um,
line?
Third line on page 12, third line down. I wouldn't say must be,
Oh,
with which both property owners and the commission are familiar.
yeah,
I would
okay.
just say are familiar.
It's fine. And then item number 2 is a way of letting people know about the guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines, which are not standards, they're not rules and regulations, but there is a wealth of information there, suggestions about if you're going to rehabilitate, here are some good ways to do it. Seems like we've got to cite that somewhere in our document.
Mhm.
But we don't want to make the mistake that we made 4 or 5 years ago and put them in front of the city council and the whole community because they're overwhelming and they distracted people badly.
Yeah. That's good.
Yep, good.
Heather, this is sort of a form thing. Do you include websites in these documents? Website URLs?
I've seen it done before.
Okay.
We don't have any currently in our
Just because
ordinances,
sometimes they change.
right?
All right, so, anybody have any other changes to B1 or new 1 or new 2?
And then Heather, and 4, Heather has kindly put in the
Right,
website.
that's good.
I do,
Yes.
Yes.
not a huge issue, but we do need to standardize how we reference the standards. That was probably
Yeah.
a bad pun there, but it's different. We had originally italicized it and then we underlined some
Yeah.
of it
Are
and
you,
we just need to figure that
are
out.
you extra busy right now? You want me to do this?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, you can say yes or no. Do you want me to
It's
do
fine,
this?
it
Do you want
doesn't
me to do
matter.
the editing, or do you have time to do it?
It doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. If you have time,
That
go
was a
for it.
yes or
I'm
no
not-
question.
I'm not gonna argue if you want to.
Oh,
But that's one thing that bothered me through the whole document. I just didn't think about it further. I just knew we had to fix that standard, how we want to address that.
be consistent.
Mhm.
All right, well, I'll let, since you didn't say, I'll let you do it.
Darn it, okay.
All right, what's next? Other other guidelines or regulations. E, that's fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And page 14, 158.09. Now, when I was reading through this, all of a sudden we started using the HOZ acronym, and I guess, does it need to be in the, I mean, it took me a few minutes to figure out what historic overlay zoning was. Is it common knowledge, or was it something that needs to be,
Well,
I think it's in the definitions, Gail.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
and was it used previously in this? I don't recall. Was it?
It's like, oh, okay.
Because usually the first time you use an acronym, it's like you'd spell it all out, and then in parentheses after it, you put the HOZ. And then from that point on, you'd use HOZ.
Anyway, we'll verify
Wait a
that.
minute, let's just
it's-
make sure that it's in the definition.
It is in the
Yeah,
definition.
Okay.
there it is,
That's fine.
N, it's N, HOZ.
Looks good.
Okay, so that one's fine. The next 158.11B. That one's fine.
You could probably take out individually, not a huge deal.
Yeah, any listed property.
I saw that. I was thinking the same thing, Heather.
Take out the word individually, I guess so, yeah. Any,
To any listed property. Yeah, reads good.
And then the back part, I couldn't quite figure out what was new changes and what were ones that you had format from before we made changes. So it's just the bold stuff new on page 16.
I don't think anything is new until
Those are,
page 19. Well, no, until I think Will mentioned capitalizing
Right.
on page 19. So I don't think anything. I guess I can't speak for Les. I don't remember there being anything
no,
else.
I didn't have anything in
Okay.
I don't think
this.
there, I mean, this was, it had already been done,
Yeah.
the back part, call it the.
Oh, I do have one suggestion. I think if you agree, I think we have to have the Secretary of the Interior standards, not the guidelines, not the law pages and page, but the standards as an appendix. So at some appropriate point in this document, we need to say Appendix A, Secretary of the Interior's standards for the treatment of historic property.
I mean, reference it somewhere? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think he wants to put the whole thing in there. How many
yeah,
pages
put them
is
in.
it?
Put them as an appendix.
Is it long?
Are you
No,
talking about the
it's-
258 page one?
200 and some pages, yeah.
No, no, no,
Oh,
no,
I was gonna,
no,
I
no,
was gonna say,
it's,
that's a little long, I think,
it's,
for.
they're right
ordinances.
here. It would be a total of 2 pages each for preservation, rehabilitation. So that's eight pages.
Is that on their website?
Yep. So it includes a definition of preservation and then the 10 standards for 8 definition of rehabilitation and the 10 standards.
So there's a short form of the standards, and we want to add that as an appendix.
I just took these off from the web. Heather, I mean, somebody with better knowledge of how to deal with computers, maybe can figure out a way of getting rid of the pictures, but
Yeah,
the only way I
cut-
could do it would be to copy the
we-
pictures.
We
Okay.
can cut and paste the text and get rid of the picture.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, that's all?
That's all.
All right, so we will make this. Get all those changes integrated. Is there any other questions about this document, John, or is Will still here?
I'm here someplace. I went to look at the document.
We can only
Do
see your,
you-
oh, there you are.
Yeah, I went to look at the document, so I have to pull it up and I could hear you and see where you're at. So it doesn't show my page numbers, but I
Yeah.
went to read the actual document to see what you're referring to.
Okay, Will or John Wade, do you have any questions about the CLG process? That-
No, I don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you? Okay,
I'm
I just want to
all
make
set.
sure,
No,
because
thank you. Yeah.
we spent nearly a year talking about this, and you guys are on your second date, so.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see, next we go to, I guess, as far as for the minutes, we're just gonna review, make all these changes, review them, and then, work on a, report that will encompass all the questions, that will, a report that will be submitted along with this to council. We'll take our time getting that, put together correctly.
Gail, do we need
Yes.
to vote on these, or is it just
I
assumed?
don't think we have anything to vote on just yet, really.
Okay,
I think that what we've had is consensus, the way I would reflect it in the minutes, we've had consensus approval of all of the
okay.
amendments with a
Yeah.
couple of editorial changes.
Yeah, we agreed to the changes. We're gonna take it back and make the changes, and then we're gonna make an associated document that explains in better detail for city council. Now, what that looks like down the road, I'm not sure what, but it'll be something beautiful, I'm sure. Don't laugh, John.
I know it'll be beautiful.
So I had a conversation, we're going on to public engagement.
Put our mask on. Now you can laugh, John. You can laugh when you
Yeah.
put your mask on. Mhm.
I was thinking about that. I was in the store, and I'm a smiler. I like to smile at people. It's like, I don't have to smile anymore. They can't see it. just be cross looking. Anyway, I talked to several people about the. We had talked about how to get more consensus and more people understanding historic preservation, the needs of historic preservation. And one of the things came up was a walking tour, some kind of an app. So I went down the rabbit hole and I found out that the city of Bowling Green has something called GoBG, and it is operated by the Visitor Convention Bureau, and it actually has mapping potential. And Carmen there, who's the marketing technology person, said that sounded really interesting. I talked to Marnie at the library, who said, oh yeah, we have that old brochure which was done back in the late 1990s that has some of the houses on. I talked to Kelly at at the historical center, Kelly Kling. She also thinks this would be a great deal if we all could work together somehow and bring all of that into one thing that was on the app that already exists at the visitor, the GoBG. So if you all want to look at the GoBG, it's an app on your phone. You're able to look at apps. Let me tell you what it says on the thing. Yeah, GoBG Ohio. You go to your app store, and I can email this out to you.
That'd be good.
Take a look at it, and then what we would end up doing is feed them information so that as we discover historic properties around Bowling Green, they would put the information in based on an address, so that if anybody wanted to do a self-guided walking tour, then they would just go look at the map and it would somehow connect them to the information. So
Great.
it's going to require a bit more work, but that's my brief update and I think my takeaway from it is the infrastructure is already in place with the visitor bureau. They all said, well, we're kind of short-handed and it's kind of crazy with the virus right now. Nobody's working, but I think we can make some goals and plans to get that actually to come to fruition. And I thought that was a really nice thing to get started. And I can work with them to get some of the existing addresses that we have information for in there. I'm not real sure, and Heather, this might be where you can help me. Is there any restriction on what's published about property? Like,
I'm not sure. I wouldn't
you're gonna
think
put a
so.
picture of my house.
Any privacy issues are in.
Yeah,
Oh,
privacy
copyright,
issues. I
okay.
don't know. I don't want to, I don't want anybody to be mad at me because I put their house on an app.
All of a sudden have a tour bus going by or something.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's a big issue, but I just want to make sure that I'm not setting myself up for a problem later.
Good question. I'm not sure.
So, I don't know, who would know? Maybe your web people. Maybe the people in the city that do the your website might be a good place for me to talk to.
Okay. You think about it.
Yeah. So that would be
Might be good to ask the city attorney too. He might know if there's any kind of action a person could take, a homeowner or business or something, but maybe the city has the right to actually list it. I don't know. I mean, that's something maybe to ask him.
Well, and I'm not thinking of every single house on every single street. It would be, going down Worcester Street,
Yeah.
it's going to be 20. Downtown, there's going to be, 30 buildings.
Well, and
It's not going to
I
be,
think you're okay with the one on the register already because
Right.
it's already has
Right.
the history on that
Right.
public document, sketches.
Public
potentially.
knowing.
and then what I thought I would do is when we did the brochure, we had a paragraph on each house and make contact with the homeowner and say, this is what we plan to publish about your historic home. Do you have any changes or additions? And just be real upfront. Say, we're going to do it unless you tell us no. Or if you want anything else in it, tell us what you want.
Well, we talked about, who knows how long ago, I can't remember now, about doing kind of a monthly spotlight
Right.
on a structure history.
Right. So we're updating goals. Do we have any goals that needed updating other than compile a presentation to associate with this
I
proposed
sort
ordinance?
of held off on doing anything until we had this discussion today. For example, now we've decided we're going to basically wait on going forward to city council until we've reached a different stage in COVID. So I
Okay.
don't really have anything at this point.
And design guidelines, you already handled that more or less.
Yeah, I like that.
Design guidelines, I think that's gone. We don't have
Yeah.
to put it on the agenda anymore.
It's a good solution.
Building inventories, I don't know what we do about that yet. So I guess, can we table that until someone,
Yeah.
okay, now, my next question is, if we are not going to press for things going forward in any kind of speedy order, do we need to have a meeting next month? Or do we want to meet every other month?
My instinct is to have a meeting next month and to try to we need to act on this amendment, this larger amendment issue.
Mhm.
But also to sort of get a game plan about how we want to
Okay.
proceed in the next few months in the way of the kind of informal meetings that the mayor kind of encouraged us to do. After that, I think
Okay.
maybe we don't need to.
We
Until
could,
it goes away, or at least.
yeah, we could talk about that one section 158.07 also.
Right.
Okay. All right, so we'll meet in September and then maybe skip October and go to November and then see how the world is working. Would that be okay? I'm not, I just want to try and get some input on whether you think we need to meet this frequently. I don't want to not meet, but I also don't think we need to come in if we're not, don't have a reason.
I think, yeah, I agree that I think if we have a sort of game plan
Okay.
for an indeterminate number of months, we don't have to meet every month
Okay.
necessarily.
That
We-
work for you? John, Will?
We pretty much have the document done. I mean, that was the big job here, and we're kind of on a waiting hold here for the moment. So yeah, I'm fine meeting next month, and then we can decide at that point if we can skip some.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Any
Sounds good.
other, excuse me,
So-
Will, or did you?
No, that sounds good.
Okay.
So September
Um,
would be, anybody got a calendar?
25th.
25th?
At 3 o'clock,
3 o'clock work?
okay?
That works.
All
Looks
right.
good.
Any other items that need discussed? Heather, anything we haven't?
No.
No, I just wanted to point out, I can't remember if I sent out
You did, I think.
when we were talking about the miss of the last ordinance, I thought
Yeah.
it was a helpful, like, I see this as helpful if we use this some way and update
Yeah.
it. Cause it kind of squishes all of, more of what Les started into, maybe something a little simpler to hand to people. So
What-
just a thought on using this in some way.
Yeah, and I had talked to Heather about doing some kind of a file sharing Google Docs or something, so we have all of our documents in the same place and she doesn't have to keep emailing things that I forgot we should have had. Could you send me that again? So I haven't done it, but I intend to, if you all think that's a good idea, to warehouse all the documents on some sort of platform like Google Docs. Does that work?
Yeah.
Yep.
Heather, what were you showing there? I don't know what that document was.
I think I emailed it after the last meeting when I had a lot of things to follow up on. It's just, when we had a proposed draft historic preservation ordinance before. And we had made a flyer about different myths out there that we were hearing.
Okay,
And, it's just a two-sided sheet. I can't remember when I emailed it. I apologize, but I
Yeah,
thought I
you-
did.
But you made it give it to John and I as new members.
uh-huh.
Okay.
It was in my notebook.
It has some green printing on it.
Well, you had the fancier, what'd you call it? Fancier final report or something, which was a multi-paged document, which I thought was very good, by the way. I think that was from 2014, but
Right.
that really nice layout of what we were proposed or what was being proposed at that time. And maybe that's something we'd want to update and make available also.
And I can share my screen if you want to see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Gotta give me a minute.
Heather, I'm sure I can find it.
Okay,
when
well, it's loading.
Oh, okay.
Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Great.
So if you need it, again, just let me know.
Yeah, send it one more time, please.
Oh,
I'm done.
you're done. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Okay, see you next month.
Okay.
Next month. We'll-
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the help, Heather.
No problem.
I'll try not to call you too many more times.
No, that's why we're here.
I was just. Like, you got more?
It's an
Like, aren't you already in
interesting question that John raises about whether